Have you ever heard a seemingly innocent phrase that you just knew meant something evil? Maybe tub girl or lemon party or the furry cheese grater? Then you may just be the victim of the darkest image in furry history. In 2007, one artist posed the question that would change the world. What would happen if you put a cheese grater inside your own butt? The answer resulted in a drawing so universally feared that it only survives through word of mouth, and any new links to it are quickly deleted. But why? How bad could it possibly have been? And how did it get the artist that made it effectively booted off the internet?
This is the mystifying lore of the furry cheese grater.
Today's bad art history, furries, foxholes, and Nancy Pelosi. It all begins in 2007. YouTube is barely in its infancy, the first iPhone hits the market, and Nancy Nation is only getting started. But in a lesser-known corner of the internet lived the then poorly understood furry community, and all of their hard work towards mainstream acceptance would be utterly destroyed on April 20th of 2007. That day, for seemingly no reason at all, a user on adult furry website E621 posts the fetish art that will live in infamy. A rather plain digital illustration of a ferret, fox, raccoon-looking creature upside down, crying and bleeding, with an unknown third party rapidly removing a cheese grater from between his legs. The comments exploded with hatred and ironic worship because one thing was perfectly clear: nobody liked this. But problems were already beginning to form. While dozens of users begged for the image to be taken down since it was not only hurting their eyes but their reputations, the original uploader was an admin, so he didn't have to listen to anybody. And he didn't. And while this could have just quietly lived and died on this one website, beneath anyone's notice, several users had quietly saved the image and started posting it where it really didn't belong.
A quick detour to 2005.
Dragoneer, known also as Sean-Paul Pichet, joins a relatively new website called Fur Affinity. After falling in love with the community, Dragoneer would take ownership of the site just 2 years later. Together with artist Canine, Dragoneer came up with Fender, the ferret-fox hybrid, Fur Affinity's new official mascot and soon-to-be victim of a kitchen appliance. So by the time the faded artwork had been uploaded, Fur Affinity was one of the most recognizable faces of furries online. And though it may have set out to just be a regular art site, it was almost immediately overwhelmed with tons of porn.
The furry optics sucked.
But you may be asking yourself, this was 2007. Shock media was huge back then. It took virtually no effort to find everything from people eating poop to losing their own heads. And other than the obvious, what made this drawing that bad? It's not real. Surely there was worse stuff out there. And there was. But here's why that didn't really matter. Quick internet history. If you don't know, Encyclopedia Dramatica, ED for short, was a satirical Wikipedia-style website with articles about every aspect of internet culture. It still technically exists, but it goes down constantly. And like 4chan, being featured on this website in any capacity was very bad news for you. For obvious reasons, the cheese grater image was prominently displayed on articles about furry activities and online sex weirdos. Rumors exaggerating the content of the image were piling up into a living legend that was monstrous compared to the actual thing. So this just wasn't adding up. This was not the worst furry artwork by even a mile. So why the hype? To answer that, we have to travel 1 year back to the GOAT. C. Shock images need no introduction, and I'm not giving you a deep dive, but it's important to understand that furries, regardless of what you may personally believe about them, use the internet much like anyone else. So it only follows that furries would have their own universe of shock image. And to briefly go over the more infamous ones, in no particular order: Sandy Boar, Spyro Subway, Two Babies, One Fox, also known as bench tails, cars banging dragons, dragons banging cars, the copy pasta about Vaporeon, a bizarre quantity of raccoon gore. Keep that one in mind. And Dorses. And the uniting factor between these Goatsy, and the cheese grater? It's mostly fetish stuff. While there's no shortage of fetish art on the internet, the artwork that you see in memes is usually the stuff that avoids immediate detection. Inflation, transformation, the Wonder Bread guy, and much like the goat of all shock images, the cheese grater hits several emotional highs at the same time. It's gory, it's gay, it's furry, it's deeply entrenched in a subculture, and it was potentially many people's first involuntary exposure to sexualized gore. And over the next 11 years, the cheese grater image stuck, becoming the single most downvoted furry art of all time. Just to put this in perspective for you, E621 hosted 1.5 million images of furries putting things inside their ass when this happened. People made fan art, the word cheese grater was its own meme now, thanks in part to a copy pasta so disgusting that if I read it to you, my channel would be deleted. But that backstory, much like the mythos surrounding this drawing, was just made up by a random person. But between the image itself, the shaky reputation of the community, and the borderline obsession people on 4chan and Encyclopedia Dramatica had with documenting cringe and gore on the internet, the cheese grater was simply too good to pass up. Cringe culture wouldn't even be relevant for another 10 years, but there was absolutely a growing appetite for pointing and laughing, especially at furries. But wait, I hear you say, how could I point and laugh at anything with nothing on my wrist? Luckily for us, today's video has been kindly sponsored by holzkern. Holzkern is an Austrian-based watch and jewelry brand for men and women, specializing in pieces as unique as you are. Each watch is one of a kind because it's made from natural materials such as wood, stone, and my favorite, pearl. I'm always looking for new functional accessories to add to my look, and my watch is not only super cute, but the watch face is made with FSC certified wood, so I can look good and feel good knowing that this helps fight deforestation. I'm also in love with their elevated rose gold watch with ceramic and genuine mother of pearl. I've gotten a billion compliments on this one. It is super iridescent in the light, and it's incredibly sturdy and waterproof. Holzkern offers a huge variety of styles, so you can dress your look up or down. And best of all, this watch, like all Holzkern products, was made in a small quality tested batch, which means it's built to last. Whether you're looking for a watch for daily use or for date night, Holzkern has you covered. And right now you can go to holzkern.com/scumbagovich and use my code SCUM to get 10% off your purchase store-wide. Thank you so much to Holzkern for sponsoring this video, and on with the show. But how exactly is it sexual? Calling this a fetish is a tall order when there's so much edgy art for edge's sake, so let me prove it to you. First up, the blood, humiliation, and disfigurement largely fall under the umbrella of guro, which is an adult fascination with gore and mutilation. As of filming, E621 hosts no fewer than 14,000 images tagged as gore, so while this is by no means a popular fetish, it's definitely thriving. Second, while extremely poorly documented, there have been several notable instances of cheese-related freak phenomena. In 2013, a very normal DeviantArt user, likely inspired by the cheese grater image, wrote a fanfiction about real-life YouTube duo Dan and Phil using a cheese grater to create bacon bits out of Phil's hog. In 2014, a Philadelphia man labeled the Swiss cheese pervert pled guilty to indecent exposure after he was caught approaching random women with a slice of cheese and asking them if they wanted to watch him rub it on himself. What did he mean by this? In 2018, a German man was found covered in cheese and dead inside of a plastic bag. It was ruled an autoerotic accident. And beyond that, what few blogs exist about cheese and/or cheese grater fetishes tend to either be total word salads or completely inactive. r/quesosexuals is without content, and one of the only relevant articles about a cheese fetish clearly delineates that it is simply too obscure to be its own thing. But let's not kid ourselves here. This has very little to do with cheese and very much to do with the prevalence of shock jock behavior in the late 2000s and early 2010s internet. Most likely, the appeal of this image for people who truly get off to this stuff is the use of a dangerous object in such an intimate, humiliating, and painful way. Which brings us back again to E621 and 4chan. While E621 is no stranger to some pretty extreme content, it does come down hard on those who break the rules. Entire fetish categories and specific users have been blacklisted from the site for much less. And up until 2006, 4chan and 7chan, to a much lesser extent, were more than willing to host the content that E621 considered too far. Although, fun fact, there was a period of time where users on 4chan were so fed up with furry posting that they kept spamming threads with images of trains until the furries fled to 7chan, among other reasons. The cheese grater, essentially, was a perfectly engineered shock image. Unsuspecting, known by one seemingly innocuous word, largely unknown outside the furry fandom, and frightening enough for normies without crossing over into real-life gore or illegal imagery. So with all this said, where the hell did it go? In 2018, over a decade after the original upload, artist CB successfully filed a takedown claim and finally got the image nuked for good. But this wasn't without consequence. CB's reputation had been significantly damaged, inextricably linked to this one artwork. And whether it was due to blowback or through personal choice, CB removed virtually all of their artwork from the internet and vanished without much of a trace. And the uploader of the post that started it all, an admin named Arcturus, had suffered so much unrelated controversy in the following years that he too was eventually banned off the site. And it is kind of fucked up that Arcturus refused to take the image down, even though it wasn't his to post, for as long as he did. But somewhat unsurprisingly, the takedown didn't make the cheese grater any less relevant, and no sooner was the original post gone than dozens of reposts on various subreddits and image boards sprang up in its place. Fender, the Fur Affinity mascot, doesn't seem to have been permanently traumatized from this experience. Although I suspect that many furries, Dragoneer included, may have taken issue with such a depiction. And on a separate note, as for Dragoneer, his lifetime commitment to the furry world actually recently came to an end due to his untimely passing. And while Fender wasn't his most important contribution, it was undoubtedly iconic. And unfortunately, this is basically everything we know. In spite of the massive bloody internet footprint of this image, very little documentation remains. The idea of a ferret fox raccoon with a cheese grater wedged up his rear ended up being 1,000 times more mimetic than the drawing could ever be, which is usually how these things go. Although furries today are by no means mainstream, their online reputation has significantly improved in spite of decades of controversy, this one included. And as for the posters who gifted us this abomination, there have been very few developments in CB's or Arcturus's ends. Which is just as well, because deadass, this topic has been incredibly grating. This has been Bad Art History. Thanks again to holzkern for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to use my link and go to holzkern.com/scumbagovich and use code SCUM to get 10% off your purchase store-wide. Apologies for what is probably a much shorter video this week. This was like relatively poorly documented compared to anything I've ever looked up. You would think for something this influential, it would have like requisite documentation, and it did not. There's so little information on this. It's literally word of mouth. The thing is word of mouth, the research is word of mouth, it's crazy. Thank you so much to Canada Cat for his gracious research assistance, and thank you as always to the patrons for making this possible. My sincerest appreciation to the Scum Brotherhood, Fat Pug, Freppy, Green Goat, Kale, Kitty S. Fleas, Kyle, Matt Voltron, Maxie, Perry, Rotten Pie, Scoo, Sloth in 3D, and Trevor Savage. And to Scum Babies, Acidic, Alice, Alexander First, Angel Perez Calzada, Apoptosis Necrosis, Baker, Kara, Corneous Corn, Evaya, Ezra Laro, Ezza 570, Hector Valenzuela, Huds, Insane Freak, Jake McGuckin, Jasper, Joshua D.A., K. Huck, Colbert Berg, Kraken Jokes, Chris, Literally Dead Inside, Max J, McBallin, Micro the Wave, Minchino Rocker, Raymundo 2112, Red Blaze 27, Ruben Manchester, Rasha 13, Sethington, Sheeps, Splendid Calhoof, Sabaton, Tommy V, Tyler H, and Unclear Rain.